Was it tougher to work with mom and dad, or was it tougher to work with your kids? Or was it tougher to work with siblings?
And it was an opportunity, good and bad sometimes, that we were always together. When you're at work, you're at work. You know, you got to remember, I got to go home to the same person that you're complaining to. So, but for the most part, it's good because we were fortunate. We built a successful business. We built this K-tech Charities that we're able to give back to a community that's been so good to us.
So you've been on the board of both the IICRC and the RIA. They're both incredible organizations.
We're in a unified step forward with each other. And it's to everybody that's a restoration contractor's advantage.
When you go to a trade show, what are you looking to accomplish?
You can learn a lot in the lobby bar of the hotel of where the convention's at. You get to hear firsthand and some real stories that guys have had to deal with. And you find out there's a lot of people going through the same problems.
So you want to share a story? We've got a great story. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Violand's GPS podcast, Growing Professional Skills, where we cater to conversations with small business owners, key decision makers, thought leaders in trades-based industries, including restoration, HVAC, plumbing, and others. And today I am happy to introduce my good friend, the owner of K-tech out in Weston, Wisconsin, Mr. Craig Kersemeier. Thank you, Craig, for joining us today. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So you are a second-generation restoration business owner.
That is correct.
So growing up, how involved were you in the family business?
Well, I mean, we talked about involved. Some of my jobs were shoveling the shop driveway so the trucks would get in and out. So, I mean, it depends how you want to define involved. And you also had the thing with helping my dad, like fill chemical jugs and things like that. And, there's probably a reason I don't have any hair up here anymore because some of the chemicals that I was exposed to at a very young age. So, but really, when I started getting out on the cruise, my parents, like I said, it was a janitorial business when it first was started. Okay. And we evolved into carpet cleaning. And then when I got involved, we got involved with it onto the restoration side of things. So, but, going out on the carpet trucks or helping my parents clean, it was probably, 14, 15 years old. I was helping them on the weekends and when I could. But, when you're just around it your whole life, you're always somewhat helping, even if it's folding towels, you're involved, I guess.
That's a beauty, I think, of family businesses. There's no child labor laws there with that.
And they got away with it.
Yeah, I was in the auto parts stores, sweeping the floors and cleaning up oil. Yeah. So how old were you then when you took over the business, and what kind of caused that to happen?
Well, it's an interesting story. So my parents set out to sell the company, and that was what they first tried doing. And then I was kind of along in the package deal. But me and the owner didn't really get along. So I was going to go out on my own, and the guy just got frustrated and gave the company more or less back to my parents and said, here you go. And because it was on a land contract. So we sat down with my parents and said, I'll come back. Just don't sell it to anybody else. So it kind of backwards way of getting back involved. Me and my sisters purchased the company in 1996 from my parents, obviously on a land contract and things like that. But so since 1996, But like I said, once again, I was involved even when I was in college. Like I said, I came back for the summers and did work with a family business. So,
how old were you at that time?
About 30, if I do the math.
Okay, all right. So tell me a little bit about. I know a lot of small businesses in this industry are family businesses, whether it's father and son, father and daughter, brothers, or whatever combination that it's going to be. Tell me a little bit about what that succession plan was like. Was it as smooth and easy as you thought it was going to be?
No. Like I said, I think my mother spent a lot of time wearing a referee's uniform between the sisters and between that, 'cause everybody had a different idea. Because originally the succession plan had nothing to do with us. They were selling it. And then all of a sudden, here we are. We all had different roles in the company, and now we had to figure out a way to work together on it. So it took a little bit. We ended up, even one of the things, my younger sister, really had no love for the business. And so we ended up buying her out. I mean, it was just, what we did. And then me and my older sister, we carried it on.
Going through that, what do you think were some of the biggest lessons that you learned that, Not that you're ever going to have to go through it again, but if you were going to coach somebody going through something like that they need to be aware of?
I think one of the things you got to throw out the age part. Who's the oldest? Who's the youngest? You got to look at who's the most qualified to do different positions. And sometimes I think it's easier because you take the family out of it if you get somebody, a consultant or a mentor or somebody that you trust their information, because we all had different roles and they're all important to the company, but they're just different. And it was deciding, like I said, who's going to, in a more or less, who's going to be the boss, who's going to be the president. And to really identify the skills that's needed for that position, and then also be the, have maybe an outside person come and do an evaluation on it, because not everybody's cut out to be a president of a company. That's maybe not in their desires or things like that. So a lot of it is conversation, but sometimes you might have to bring outside people in.
So when you went through this transition, did you move into that president's role right away?
Well, I was, at the time when my parents had the business, I was a vice president. So
Okay.
It was likely. And then when they sold it to the other person, I still kept the role of the vice president of operations. So, it was easy for me to somewhat transition into the president role because I understood the operation. The part I didn't completely understand, and I had to learn, was the business side of things, because, like I said, just wasn't really overly exposed. I was in college a little bit, but it was no longer paper money. It was real money you were dealing with.
Okay. So did your mom and dad stay on in the business at that point, or did they sell it and walked out the door and said, here you go, good luck?
To be honest, like I said, my mom is still somewhat involved at 80 years old. Like I said, but most of it's with our K-tech Charities. But so she stayed very much. She was on. She was doing that. My dad was, well, he would show up kind of on a daily basis type thing, and he would offer any advice or critique what we're doing right and wrong. But he was very much involved and very supportive.
Oh, good. Okay. So looking at the greater Weston, Wisconsin area or the greater Wausau area, whichever one you want to go with, you're looking at about, according to the Googles, you're looking at about 40,000 people. So not a major, not a podunk town, but not a major metropolis either. So when you're doing business in a town where 40,000 people, you're going to know a lot of them.
Yeah.
How do you go about recruiting employees in a market like that?
Well, like I said, it's not a perfect science. A lot of it has to do because you do know people, which is the good and bad. It's about relationships and people they know your name, they know what you're about. And you hopefully, like I said, if you know somebody that has a son, has a daughter that wants to get involved, so that's really how a lot of it, what you're getting from the get-go on some of it, because it is a small town. You can't hide. So, but yeah, I think that's big. The thing is just relationships that you have that out there and people know. I passed out some of my business friends and stuff. Hey, if you know anybody that's looking for this or has some interest for this, send them my way, and it's vice versa for that.
Are most of your employees come to you then through referrals?
Well, I think I got some longtime ones that used to do the old way and fill out an application and came in. But I think that the newer group that we do have coming are from referrals.
So when you're looking at bringing somebody on board, obviously most of the time they're not going to come from the industry. They're not going to have the certifications and the training. You'll handle that on the back end. What are key things that you're looking for when you hire an employee or you're interviewing somebody?
Well, personally, I don't do a lot of the interviewing, but I can tell you what we do look for. They got to understand that they're going to get their hands dirty. They got to be comfortable with going out there and rolling up their sleeves and doing that type of work. We tell them all the bad side. We tell them that we do what fires are, sewer jobs are, biohazard jobs are. So we lay it out right from the get-go so they understand what type of work we're really doing. So we hopefully find people that have some kind of a mechanical aptitude. Obviously, they adapt the best for it to be able to go out and do that. So that's on the technician side. And then now when you start getting people into the project supervisor, project manager type thing, with the way our industry is going, they better have some tech skills, that and soft skills, because they're going to be dealing with customers. They can't hide behind their phone and their laptop and their iPad all the time. Sometimes they're going to have to talk and communicate. So it's two different sets that you look at. And we hope we get technicians that can see a career path and they can move their way forward within the company to move up to wherever they feel comfortable they want to grow to.
When you bring somebody into the company and you have the onboarding process and you have the training process, and that's going to be different for different levels within the organization, how much of the training do you think is dedicated to the technical aspect of the position and how much of it is dedicated to the soft skill side of it?
I think when they come in, I think it's more to the technical side. I mean, we have SOPs and checklists and things like that. And I think part of it happens, the soft skills happen when they become comfortable in that job and they have confidence in the job. I think that's where some of the soft skills can come out, where they can, when a customer can ask them a question and, hey, I know that answer, and I think so it starts with technical, then goes on to the soft skills.
So it's going to help you be able to bring in employees because you've got a lot of connections in the town. Obviously, second generation, you've been around for a long time. You've got other employees who have friends and family, and they're going to recruit people in. But it seems like in a town or an area like that, you probably know your competitors pretty well too, almost like you went to school with some of them, you grew up with some of them. How does that have an impact on you, knowing the competitors probably as well as you do?
Personally, I feel there's enough in our community for good competitors. So there is work there. So, but I think, I don't know. I mean, they're looking for the same people we are. And I don't really have a great answer. I think it is a little bit knowing that what they're about and they know what we're about. And hopefully if you have an employee and if they compare the two, that employee finds one that's the best fit for them.
Okay. That makes sense. So with your connections, I know you're real active with the police department and a lot of other areas within the community. What are some strategies that you have found that have helped you grow the business through those relationships in the community?
Well, I think that's one of the advantages of a smaller community. I think being involved, civically, the chamber, fundraising, some of the things, but them are all things that align with what some of our core values of giving back. You're seen as the person that's out there doing those things. And so I think it's important to our culture, and you meet a lot of people that way. And so hopefully that's a little bit of the secret sauce that's helped K-tech continue to grow.
So with being a second generation business owner, what kind of influence do you think growing up in the business with mom and dad, how did they influence you as a leader, as a manager?
Well, both my parents they're very different. So like I said, I think one of the biggest things I tell people is my dad taught me the how, not the why. He taught me a work ethic, and it was all around us as a family member. You just saw that. And then you get my mother, who was volunteering, doing things. So it got us the taste of giving back and doing that. So I think, with our parents, like I said, it helped both ways, what they were able to instill in us.
With that, has it allowed you with, your kids involved in the business at one point, at one time, is sort of your experiences and being in their shoes and their role at one point, does that influence in how you worked with them when they were with you?
Yeah, I think it's all the way around. And some people are good at it and some people aren't so good at it. I think one of the things is you got to separate family from business. When you walk through the office doors, you're a K-tech employee right now, and you need to deal with things on that level. But when you walk out that door, you're my son, or you're my sister, or you're my mom. So I think some of our family members were better at it than others. I think I did a really good job at it, but I think some of maybe my sisters and that, it was a little harder for them for that separation because I was brother Craig, son Craig, or dad. So it was a little different.
What were some of the strategies then that you used? Again, I grew up in the family business. I understand the dynamics. A lot of our clients are family businesses, and Thanksgiving hits you a little bit different when you work in a family business. So what are some of the strategies that you used that maybe took you a while to learn that really helped out dealing with the dynamics when it comes to that?
Some of them are pretty simple. We had job descriptions for what you were and performance requirements that we had written that we all agreed on. I mean, we had them and we passed them around the table. And so that was one of the things. And some of them are as simple as, like, for example, my mother, when she's here, she's Sue. She's Sue, she's Sue, she's Sue. When I walk out the door, it's Mom. I think there's just some things that you just do. You just got to have that separation with them. But I mean, I think some of the biggest things is the foundation stuff of a succession plan, of the transition that we really didn't have at first, but we created them, and that was an easier way for us to move forward.
What were some of the most rewarding aspects then of working with your parents that really help change you or help you grow, or that you look back on real fondly and say, I'm glad I got that opportunity?
Well, just being with them. I mean, like having that opportunity to work and build something with them, that'll never be taken away from us as a family. So, and it was an opportunity, good and bad sometimes, that we were always together. But for the most part, it's good because we were fortunate. we built a successful business. We built this K-tech Charities that we're able to give back to a community that's been so good to us. So them are things that, I think looking back, we did this together, and I'm very proud of that.
What was tougher? Was it tougher to work with mom and dad, or was it tougher to work with your kids? Or was it tougher to work with siblings?
I think that the toughest was siblings when things didn't go exactly right. So I think because there's always a little bit of competitiveness amongst siblings already. Mm-hmm. So this just added a flavor to it. I think working with my mother was very easy, and my dad was strict, which of that generation, that's how they are. With my sons, the hardest thing was for me when talking to them is like, don't bring this to your mother, because they did that a couple times. They'd complain when mom would ask how work is, and then when I get home, now it's my wife, and she's like, well, you shouldn't have said that to Kyle, or you shouldn't have did this to this. So it was just like, we that was one thing to teach with them, is like, when you're at work, you're at work. Mm-hmm. You got to remember, I got to go home to the same person that you're complaining to. So, so please, work around it. And actually, for a while, my wife worked for us, worked within the company before we had our twin boys. So that was also an interesting dynamic working with your wife.
So the first time I worked for my dad, it caused a lot of friction because I was a teenager. Second time, I was, in my late 20s, and it caused us to get a lot closer than I think we'd ever been. Now, I haven't worked for my dad in, 12, 15 years, but we're still closer today because of that second time around. Had I not gone back to work for him, I don't know if that would have happened quite in the same way. Do you feel that family business, once you get through it, once you get through all of the challenges that come with it, does it bring you together in a way that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, obviously, I'm at a great place with my mother and father right now, closer than probably I was 20 years ago. I think they look back and reflect on what was built, and knowing that, what it started with them with a van, a mop pail and ringer, and they went out and they're going to start a janitorial company. And this year's our 50th year.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So little milestone there, but so they had a lot that we can all look back at and be very proud of.
So I remember being at some conferences with you. I remember being in Vegas with your mom and dad one time, hanging out in the casinos and having a beer and a good time with them. It was a lot of fun. But we've hung out at conferences over the years, and obviously M&A is huge in most trade industries, especially in HVAC and plumbing and restoration. And we're sitting there and your phone's ringing and the text messages, and it's people who are at the conference wanting to talk to you about purchasing the business, getting the dot on the map. And you've turned them all down.
I've turned them all down. I think the real reason, to be completely honest, is I always had my plan A was hoping my sons would be the third generation. And currently, as we're sitting here, that's not one of the things that they want. And I totally respect that. So you got to start looking, what is that plan B? So, and I don't know that answer yet. So, but it is, might change over the next couple of years, knowing I got to find some kind of exit because my plan A doesn't seem to be working out. So plan B's up.
Plan B's up. Okay. So you're starting to think maybe a succession plan and what that looks like. These initial stages, how do you go about formulating what the potential options are that you're comfortable with?
Well, I think first thing is I got to realize I'm not ready to retire. So it has to figure in some way that I'm still part of that program. And I got to make sure, because it's important to me that transition, if it is with our employees, that they land safely and that they're taken care of, because that's important to me. And obviously we got some family, family members and stuff, but I think everything else will work out. But I think we're in too early of stages to know that. But those are two criteria that are gonna matter in helping me make my decision.
Do you think there'll come a day here where you just sort of wake up and the time is right?
I'll let you know when that happens.
That's a loaded question. I get it. I get it.
You'll be my second phone call, okay?
I'll take it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Violand's GPS podcast. I hope you're discovering valuable insights and practical wisdom to guide you on your journey. The 2025 Violand Executive Summit will take place on June 23rd and 24th in Canton, Ohio. This event features 12 advanced business courses to choose from covering topics such as performance management, artificial intelligence, digital marketing, results-driven selling, business financials, and much more. Combining collegiate and real-world education from world-class instructors, all customized to small businesses in the trades. It's also a fantastic opportunity to network with inspiring professionals like those featured on the GPS podcast. Don't miss out. Register today at violand.com or use the links provided on the screen or in the description. Now, let's get back to our show. Well, one of the things that people in the industry who know you know how active you have been in the restoration industry and in leadership roles and restoration affairs. So you've been on the board of both the IICRC and the RIA. What was the position that you held in IICRC?
Well, I was from a board member all the way up to first vice president. So, and I was also a marketing chair. So when you're on it for 15 years, you get a lot of different opportunities to wear different hats. So for 15 years, I served in some capacity with the IICRC. The RIA, it was a 3-year term, and I was just a board member on that. But it was at a crucial time and an interesting time because it was the time when the IICRC and the RIA were starting working together. And so it was a very interesting time to be. And actually, I was on the IICRC board and the RIA board at the same time. So there's a lot of times I had to say, no comment. I can't vote, can't this, but I'd hear both sides of it there. So it was interesting to be there during that transition.
Do you know of anybody else who served on both boards at the same time?
No.
Think you might got a record there? Okay.
I might got a record, yeah.
So we're going to come back to that RIA, IICRC, and what happened there, because that is an unbelievable story that I think a lot of people don't know it from your perspective and what you went through and both boards went through at that time. But going back to just serving in IICRC, serving in the RIA, they're both incredible organizations serving the industry, but they do two different things. Can you kind of explain the difference between both boards and both programs?
Sure. And this helps, like when we get down to a little further down, we want to talk to more about the actual deal. But the IICRC is a certification and standard writing organization. Mm-hmm. They're not a trade association. And what RIA is a trade association that represent restoration contractors throughout the world, actually. So there's two different things. And that in itself was our guiding light when we were, working at trying to get these together. You got to understand there's a lot of people who think the IICRC is a trade association, and it's not. I mean, it basically, they write standards, they have certifications, they do renewals, they do the testing and exams. That's kind of where their gig is, and to try getting those standards into different organizations of influence, the government and IAQ type industry. So,
what was some of the most rewarding things that you got out of it? I've served on committees at the RIA, not eligible for board because I'm a vendor and all of that, but I know what I get out of being a part of that, especially as a vendor. But you as a contractor, tell me a little bit about what drives you to be involved. 15 years of IICRC board membership is probably another reason why you don't have a lot of hair.
And there you go. A lot of this. But
you got to love it to do that.
It was being involved and thinking you're making a difference and you're seeing progress. I mean, the progress where IICRC was and, how they grew as an organization, being part of that. There's a part of that you're proud that you were involved in some of those levels of its growth. RIA too. I mean, it was putting through a real transitional time. We were, remember when we had COVID and we didn't know what was going to happen, and in regards to a convention. And then, hey, we pulled it off, and we pulled it off very well. And you and I were both on the committee together, and be able to see that. So there's it's personal pride, and it's working with people that you really like to be working with. It's not all work. It is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, it is a lot of fun. It is a lot of work, and it's a time commitment. But you do get a lot out of it. So working for both or serving for both of them, most people aren't going to do that. Most people if they're going to be actively involved in a leadership position, they're going to be one or the other. How would you, as a normal person who doesn't get involved in everything that you get involved in, how would you decide which of the two would be the right fit for you to serve on?
Well, I think a great thing that you can do is start with committees. I think that gives you your first taste to jump in on the board, because the board is a time commitment. I think to learn a little bit of the logistics and the players that are involved, I would highly encourage somebody to get on something that interests you in a committee level. And then you might say, hey, I don't know, because believe it or not, I know you're going to have a hard time believing this, there's politics in our industry. And you got to learn to navigate them. You got to know who's who and all the things that are involved. And so that would be my suggestion with anybody. But getting involved, it's gratifying. And you can do it on your own terms of how involved you want to be. So that would be my suggestion.
So let's get into the story. A lot of people don't know, when we talk about politics, what happened with the RIA, what happened to the IICRC. And we don't have to name names. We don't have to burn any kind of bridges. But if you're just getting into the industry right now, they've got a pretty good relationship.
Yeah.
7-8 years ago, that was not the case. What caused, again, without burning bridges, what kind of caused that split to happen?
Well, the IICRC, obviously does standards and certifications. And there was something that happened in a board meeting when it was not RIA, it was actually ASCR, that upset both sides. And it had to go around the fire standard, the fire smoke standard, in filing a PINS number, which is all part of writing a standard. So that happened. I only hear more of the stories of where that was, but it was always established that, RIA and IICRC will never be together because of that incident. So what ended up happening is I was out in Australia representing Phoenix Restoration Equipment, helping them do some training and some of their trade shows. And it was at the RIA convention. And I stumbled across our mutual friend, Chuck Violand, who was the president at the time of RIA. So we were just talking over a beer, and it kind of gets to the, I was just like, why can't we get these people together? I'm sitting there, I'm IICRC. I wasn't on the RIA board at the time. And I get along with the president that I'm standing right next to and some of the other people that are there. Timing was when we just came back, the Violand has their summit in Canton. And some of the wheels were turning a little bit, and Chuck said, hey, while you're out here at the summit, do you mind if we jump on a phone call? A couple of the leaders from RIA and a couple from the IICRC, and let's just have an initial conversation. And we left that conversation saying, let's have further conversation. And they assigned, from the RIA side, that they assigned Mark Springer.
Pretty well-known guy.
Yeah. And they assigned me kind of on the IICRC side. And he said, why don't you guys talk? And we knew each other from, previously. So it wasn't like we didn't know each other.
Yeah, you guys you were both DKI members.
Yep,
time,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so we both said, let you guys do the first, run at it. So we sat down and had a great conversation. And we said, like I said, RIA is a trade association. IICRC, as I said, is a certification and standard writing organization. Stay in your lane in the highway. So we basically got there and we did the pros and cons and what we agreed with, what we didn't. And we found out that the list of things were very small, but everybody just didn't want to sit at the table and have that conversation. So we came up with a proposal between the two boards. And like I said, it got unanimously approved by both boards to do that. And the thrust of it was the fire standard, which RIA was, it's been years and years and years waiting for it to come out. And everybody kept asking the IICRC. So like I said, finally they were given, here they are in collaboration. They wrote the standard and it just came out. Like I said, within a month or so ago, I started seeing that coming out. So it was basically getting people to sit down, having, and I think a little bit that helped is you had new faces that were there. We didn't know all the stuff that was in the past because we weren't really involved. Mark Springer wasn't involved. I wasn't involved. So it's like, let's not waste our time there. Let's work on what we have in front of us. And it worked.
It's pretty amazing what can get done when the egos aren't leading the conversation right there.
Absolutely.
So getting those two groups now where they are working together and there's great communication, they're supporting each other, because if you're a contractor, you should be a member of both because they are completely separate organizations with two completely different purposes.
Yep.
how is getting those two together on the same page moving forward? What kind of effect is that having, in your opinion, on the industry?
Well, I think one of the things, if you have any outside parties that are looking and you're looking at our industry, they could always come back, well, your two groups can't even get along together, So why should, so it's really hard to have standards or have standard of cares and anything that's out there unless you are together. So it kind of answers that thing. It shows that we're in a unified step forward with each other. And it's to everybody that's a restoration contractor's advantage. So I think from the outside perspective is very important from the government looking at us, because we're all together. We agreed that these are standards. I mean, standards are great. They're consensus documents. I mean, so it's not just 5 guys sat in a room and wrote this thing up and said, this is a standard. So it has to go through all its processes, which is probably why it took as long as it did from the IICRC side once they got into the writing part of it, just because they have to answer all those.
I have to go to a lot of shows because I'm a vendor, and it's a great place to meet people. It's the only way I can truly market nationwide besides digital marketing strategies. If I want to meet somebody face-to-face, I got to go to a show. You go to a lot of shows because you were in that marketing role with IICRC, or in the leadership role with the RIA, plus you've got your own restoration business that you've got going on. When you go to a trade show, what are you looking to accomplish while you're there, besides the meetings you got to do for leadership? But from a personal standpoint, what are you looking for?
Well, again, a lot of it is just, I'll be honest, it's reconnecting with some people that you don't see. I mean, a lot of the business friends I have, we're not in the same town, we're not in the same state. So it is a big part of a social thing besides the meetings that you get involved with. But new products or new services, I mean, it's really changing kind of rapidly. And like, especially in the technology side that you see on the restoration, it just amazes me within the 6 months what's changed and what we all do. I mean, I usually go through the day one and I just see who's there. Then I sit down with my thing and I write down who do I want to have a meeting with and schedule that in the next 2 days after that. But being abreast of what's going on here in the hub, from the guys, part of it, and I'll be honest, and you've been there. You can learn a lot in the lobby bar of the hotel of where the convention's at. You get to hear what's going on, and it's it's not filtered like through the media, so you get to hear firsthand and some real stories that guys have had to deal with.
So you want to share a story? We've got a great story. Let's share this one for the audience. So Craig and I, we've been to a lot of shows together over the years and all over the country. And so usually we'll end up at a lobby bar somewhere and, have good conversation. And in this particular instance, you and I are down in Cincinnati for the experience. They had brought Chuck in to do a keynote. It was a shared keynote with Les Cunningham. It was kind of a ask the consultant type keynote up there. And you and I are sitting at the bar because it was kind of a downtime for the show at that point. You wanna tell everybody where it went from there?
So an industry legend, Nick Palella, they recognized him at that show, but they had his daughter Angela who showed up and to basically on his behalf. So
because he had just passed away.
He just passed away, exactly. So she sees us sitting at the lobby bar. She comes over and she has her phone out and she's here, but her sisters are going to Wiggly Field and they were going to disperse some of Nick's ashes.
Now, we're hoping the statute of limitations has run out on that as we're telling this story.
Yeah, well, deny.
That's it.
And
allegedly.
So she has her phone out and we're sitting on each side of her and she has that there. One sister's filming the other sister. And when they were about to do the act, the wind changed. And all we had is a lot of screaming from her sister. I got Nick all over me. So, like I said, we got to watch it firsthand, like it says on her cell phone. But interesting stories that you can have. And like I said, and Nick is a legend. Like I said, when you talk about going to trade shows, I said that man was at every trade show I can possibly imagine. So, and he's dearly missed by all of us in this industry.
Yeah, he was there morning, noon, and night at all of these shows, and it was like a scene out of The Big Lebowski. I mean, and I remember all of the screaming, and you and I just like stopped, both of our mouths just dropped, and we're looking at each other like she's gonna have a breakdown right here. And then she starts laughing.
Right.
And as soon as she starts laughing, she's like, that's it. That's his final prank. And it made it like all the air could come out. And we're like, that just happened.
Yeah, it was something.
So these are the types of not just the business conversations, but I think the personal side to the trade show. And I think a lot of people forget that because they're so busy in the grind and, hey, I can't get away from the business right now. And I got to look busy. I got to stay busy. I don't want my employees think I'm goofing off in New Orleans or Cincinnati or somewhere. But it's that. Talk a little bit about those personal connections and what you get from that piece and all the different amazing people that you have met at the show that you now consider friends.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I think you need it too, because sometimes you think that the situations that you have at your own business are just K-tech problems. When you get out there and you find out there's a lot of people going through the same problem. So it's a little bit of counseling you can get from going and seeing other people. And because, you get in that daily grind, you get in that all the time, and it's refreshing to get away. But, I've been blessed to meet so many great people. Like I said, as we mentioned with Nick, and one of the people that kind of years ago was very helpful with me in teaching me some of the stuff to know. Like I said, my dad taught me the how, but the why part. I mean, it's people like Cliff Slotnick who, I could pick up the phone and he gave me his number. He'd answer the call when I have a question. I'm like, holy cow, Cliff Slotnick's answering my calls, and he'd answer my question. And I had, you had people like that, and Chuck DeWald. Yeah. Chuck DeWald, I mean, was great. One of my close friends, like I said, was like a brother to me, is Larry Carlson. He's another one that could explain things. So I've been very fortunate to have these people around me, and where I can pick up the phone, and when I have questions on the why do we do it this way, or what's a better way to do that, to be on see some of the cutting edge stuff. There's been so many people that have helped me along the way that, and the list could go on and on. But being at those shows gets you in front of those people, gets you with those people, to be able to pick up, like, Chuck Violand, a good friend, where I can pick up, I have a question on something, I could pick him up. Chuck's a big book reader, and we used to share books that he likes. And when I'd read one that I like, he would do the same. So it's those things, that's the circle of life that you can't put a price on.
As a current co-chair of the Restoration Industry Association Membership Committee and a member of the RIA Planning Event Committee, it means I get a pretty unique behind-the-curtain view at numbers. And I can assure you, registration for the 2025 Convention and Expo in West Palm Beach, April 28th through the 30th, the numbers, folks, are blowing up. This thing sold out last year. It's going to be even bigger this year. Reason being is the unmatched education and experience that you get from the breakout sessions that take place. They are designed by contractors, for contractors, specific to issues you're dealing with every single day. This is how you get in the know. Plus, you add in the conversations that take place. You add in the networking that takes place, and it is absolutely unmatched. Register for the convention now, and if you're not a member, it's time. Rising tide raises all ships. Jump on board. I think one of the things that, if I was you, I'd be most proud of, you've built a great business. And it's been a family business. Nobody's killed each other yet. You've got a lot of successes. You've got a lot of leadership in the industry in multiple different ways. But you've got K-tech Charities. And K-tech Charities is really something I think that's unique, that is special. Can you talk a little bit about what brought it about and how you've been able to grow it and the impact in your community?
Well, like I said, we started out by, really the first thing, we had a little company golf outing, and we said, and we'd get a couple vendors and stuff, and we would do that. And all of a sudden I had this idea. I said, why don't we do something to, like, we can raise funds for something, to make a difference, instead of just going out and golfing and having a few beers and grilling out. Why don't we do something with a purpose? So we did that for a couple of years, and we were basically, it was for food baskets that we'd do it around the holiday time, where we would give, 15, 20 food baskets to people that in our community. Well, this thing really grew. And like I said, so in 2006, we created a 501c3 K-tech Charities. My thought being that it allowed it to be a vehicle that people could donate more money, because they would get a tax deduction and type things like that, because it was, also made it more legitimate. And it took off. We went up and we did as much as like this year, years in the past, 450 food baskets we would deliver from the funds we raised on that side. But this year we did like 250, and then we gave $5,000 to the American Legion to pay for all the Thanksgiving and Christmas meals for all the veterans that they deliver or have available for them. So, I mean, that's been one of the things we do. The other thing we do is Pink Ribbon Open. That's a golf outing that we do in June. We've raised about $86,000, I think we raised this year, but we've been able to give financial support to people who are going through breast cancer. We don't want to give it to Susan B. Coleman. We don't want to give it to the medical. We want to give it to the people that have an instant impact for what their needs are right now while they're going through their treatments. We have a search dog. The police department was looking to purchase one, and they didn't have it in the budget. Mm-hmm. So we donated towards that to be able to do that. And a unique thing on that is the name of the dog is Katie. And my niece at 8 years old, she passed away, blastomycosis. So the dog was named after her. Oh, wow. They have it on the car and stuff like that, Katie. It's things to be able to give back. We've been, very fortunate. We've raised over $2 million since 2006 to give back to our community, from breast cancer to food to like the dogs. And so it is something I'm very proud of, and it keeps my mom busy. They all know my mom when she comes around with raffle tickets. No one can say no to Mama Sue. Mm-hmm. So they come there, they just get their $100 bill out and just fill it out. This is just how it's going to be. So, but we've got, some people, like I said, a lot of the Green Bay Packers, they come on over for our Pink Ribbon because they saw what we were doing, and they like to be involved. They literally call me up and say, "What's the date of the Pink Ribbon?" And we've had, Lynn Dickey, Paul Kaufman, and a lot of those guys, they reach out to me, wanting to make sure they can have that on their calendar. So it's very special to see what we've been able to do with all of our business friends to keep it going. So it's like 21 years, I think it's this year it's going to be.
Wow. So if I was a younger restorer and I feel like I'm turning the corner and I've got my feet underneath me and I'm building this business up, and now I want to start giving back and I want to do something like that, what's the initial steps that you've got to take to form a charity like that?
Well, you got to forming the charity is probably the easiest part. Okay. How you're going to fund that, whether you're going to do, you're going to put some of your own business money and it's going to be self-funded that way, or you're going to do golf events or things. But find something, if you're doing like golf events, find something that you're passionate, you enjoy. I enjoy golf. I'm not good at it, but I enjoy golf. But I said, so they, so it was an easy thing for us to do a couple golf outings a year to be able to raise money. But, there's so many organizations in your communities that could just a helping hand, even if you can't do nothing else but volunteer some of your time. You don't have to travel. Like there's some traveling involved when you're getting some of our industry boards, but there's so many things that are going on right in your own community that you can just volunteer time to be involved. I would highly encourage that. It's gratifying to be able to go do that, to give back.
Oh, I can imagine. That's got to do a lot too, I think, for your whole team. How do you work that into the employee development and into the culture of the organization?
Well, I think they see it because we're preparing for this. Like, what are you guys doing over here? Well, we're getting baskets ready for this, so we're doing this in our own shop here. So there are a lot of the stuff when they're bringing their trucks in, they're seeing stacks of food sitting there, and then can I help with this? We need guys folding boxes so we can do this. We do that. So, it's because it's just around them. So I think they get involved and feel, some of them, I know they're very proud of the things that we do.
So switching gears here, you've been in the industry for a while. Hopefully you're going to be around for a while because we still got a few more beers to drink when we go out to some of these industry shows. But where do you see some of the challenges that the industry is going to be facing over the next couple of years, or where do you see some opportunities that you think some of these businesses need to jump on right now and be able to make a difference?
I think people have to come to the realization that TPAs are here. Mm-hmm. So, and if, that you might have to, because I know a lot of people, I'm not going to get involved with them. Well, you've got something that's controlling 30% of the market. If you have enough work that you don't have to, so you got to find a way. But I think that's two-sided. I think the TPAs and the restoration has to find a common ground. And right now it's not. They might use the word partner. There is no partnership in it. It's a dictatorship from their side to the restoration contractor. So that needs to be worked on. And I think it can be worked on. If you get parties to sit at a table and discuss, I have a little experience in it, you probably can get some resolution to where that is on it. the insurance companies are going to look at it, because if there's a way an insurance company can save costs, not send out a physical adjuster and just have desk adjusters, it's to their financial advantage to try also getting this to work out. So I think that's no indication that it's not here to stay, to work on that. I think people got to not have all their eggs in one basket also. I think that's important. You don't want to live by all TPA work or anything, but also just all restoration. I think sometimes you might got to look at some of the equipment that you have there. If restoration is slow, maybe you need to expand it. Like we do industrial cleaning and things like that, because our guys, we have scaffolding, we have lifts, we have a lot of the stuff that's here. Why don't we use it other than just on the fire damage side or the water damage side? So utilizing your equipment so it's always being used, I think is important. I think indoor air quality is going to be a big thing for a long time. So when you start looking at duct cleaning and different other things in regards to indoor air quality, I think it's an opportunity for people to look into it. And once again, they have training, and if you've done mold remediation work and some of the things, you might have some of the equipment already, HEPA vacs and some of the things that are necessary for indoor air quality. So I think those are some of the things that you're gonna see, and it's just crazy, the technology part, which what they come on from your computers, what you can have all done, and you can walk right now with an iPad and walk and do click, and it does all your measurements and all that stuff. I mean that them are all efficiency tools, and that's what people are going to need, because as the margins start shrinking, you got to figure out be a smarter contractor.
Yeah, the days of the Wild West are over.
Yeah.
The better businessman is going to win moving forward. So you are a member of CORE. I think you're one of the original members, right? You're one
I was in the first 10 companies that were
early adapters to it.
Yep.
Do you want to tell people a little bit about what CORE is and what you get out of it and reasons for being a part of it?
Oh, sure. Well, one of the big things on with CORE was I like the leadership that was there. I had previous experience with that leadership. And when Dan reached out to me and was asked about my opinion, what do you think? Do you think it's a good idea? I mean, that was on early stages, and we talked at a trade show, to be exact. We were at the Mirage at a bar, and him and I we laid out some things. So he had one direction he was going to go, and all of a sudden he did an about face and came back. He said, we should do it this way. Then when he started naming some of the players that were interested, I was like, these are all my buddies. I mean, I was like, I'd love to do that with this group if we could pull this group together, in which he did. So, CORE is a franchise, but it's unique in some of the things that they do. But, they got a good leadership team. What people got to realize when you get involved, when unlike other franchises, they're built. This was right from ground zero, building it up, and it's still a process to be able to do that. So, like I said, it's not for everybody. What I love about CORE is I can keep my K-tech name and be part of CORE Elite. That meant something to me, because that's in our marketplace, because we're smaller. K-tech means something here, and CORE really wouldn't. So it was a nice trade-off for us.
Nice. So the final question for you is, you are a giant Green Bay Packers fan. I believe you're a season ticket holder. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct.
I'm an owner too.
That's right. You are. Do you have the stock certificate?
I have the stock certificate. Yes, I do.
So tell me your favorite Green Bay Packers memory.
It'd have to be the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously, for when they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think that whole game and how it played out was probably my favorite memory. But there's been a lot of good games, good times over there. It's a unique franchise, to say the very least, to be a franchise owned by the people. And a lot of heritage there. I mean, when I walk into Lambeau Field, I still get goosebumps. I mean, just because it's just a cool stadium to walk into, and a lot of good experiences there.
Well, as a lifelong Cleveland Browns fan, when you start talking about your team even making it to the Super Bowl, is painful for those of us who continue to, for no apparent reason, cheer on the brown and orange. So
yeah.
I know your pack is in the playoffs this year, so best of luck to them.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll see what happens. Like I said, it's going to be not the easiest of games, considering Barkley's a darn good running back, and that's probably a little bit of our weakness is stopping a running back. So we'll see what the game plan is come Sunday.
Well, I want to say thank you very much for being part of this podcast. This was a lot of fun for me, obviously, because I've known you for a long time. I've got a lot of respect for you and what you've done for the industry, what you've done for your family and for K-tech and your employees. So thank you for being part of this. And
Thank you.
we hope that our audience will tune in to the next session that we have. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.